How's it going, friends? As I need a little bit more time to fully wrap up the final episode of the Good For You Awards 2015, I figured I'd take this break as an opportunity to run through the series so far and explain some of the choices that I made, because there were some controversial ones, which I expected, but I figured that it was worthwhile addressing them. See, while I found that a lot of the responses were fairly reasonable, just based on people's own personal opinion, which is fine, there were certain instances where it seemed to have been born out of a misunderstanding of the way that I operated in this series, as well as my own personal opinion. Now, two things that I'll explain before we even get into it. One, if it was a game category, the general rule of thumb was that I had to have actually played the game for it to be nominated, hence why certain games were omitted. Yeah, I made a big point of this when I did it twice in the series, but I didn't really want to make it so whereas like 2 or 3 games in the categories were games that I had not played. You know, why would I make a habit of that? Second, it should have gone without saying, but with the more subjective categories, of course it was going to be based on what I personally thought was the most overrated or the most disappointing. The latter in particular, because disappointment varies depending on what person it is. What disappoints you may not disappoint me based on my expectations compared to yours, vice versa. With that said, let's just run through it. We'll start with the most controversial one, which was the worst AAA game of 2015, which I awarded to The Order 1886. The reason for that choice, as outlined in the video, is the fact that The Order is it doesn't do anything. It's such a nothing game. You won't remember anything. It wasn't fun. You won't replay it. And in certain ways, it actually regressed the third-person shooter genre in its stupid linear design that's way more linear than some of the other comparatively linear titles in the genre. It had stupid mechanics like not being able to dodge until the game told you could dodge. These annoying quick time events instead of actual bosses. It's restrictive controls. It's restrictive level design. The fact that throughout most of the game, you're just shooting with mundane, boring weapons. The only thing the game has is that it looks good and it has an interesting theme that's not even utilized properly. The story is not that great either. I can't see how anybody can say it's a good game or that it's an average game. There's nothing average about it. Most games are not 5 hours long and this bad and this boring. I really didn't think this would be a controversial one, and yet it was. Now, a lot of people pointed out to me 2 games in particular that could have been nominated. These 2 games were Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, especially that one, and The Devil's Third. So, the thing is, with both of these games, I didn't even consider them when I was writing it. It didn't even crop up in my mind. Hey, what about Tony Hawk Pro Skater? I completely forgot it even existed. Which, you know, is pretty telling when I'm usually up to date on this stuff and when I could tell you specific release dates for certain titles, especially of their major titles. But in my defense, I have a few things that I can raise. One thing is that I've been pretty upfront about the fact that I don't cover sports games on my channel, hence why I didn't even consider it, because it is technically a sports game. But second, and more importantly, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 is not a AAA title. A AAA title needs to have a relatively large team working on it, as well as a relatively large budget. Those are the 2 prerequisites. I believe the third one is also marketing, which is also pretty important. But all we need to do is just look at the team that made this game. Their name is Robomodo, right? I've never even heard of them before. And that's because they barely made anything. Let me show you what games they've made. Tony Hawk The Ride, which was really bad, Tony Hawk Shred, In Time, Big League Sports Connect, Tony Hawk Pro Skater HD, about 4 or 5 games that don't even have Wikipedia pages that are like these spin-offs, and then Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, which they didn't even make on their own. They made it with a team that also didn't have a Wikipedia page. Most AAA teams have a Wikipedia page that's longer than 1 line. From that, you can ascertain that they're probably not big, that they've not really made anything. I doubt they were that big. All you need to do is look at the game. It looks shit. It does. See, I'm not denying that the game probably sucks. Like I said, I haven't played it, so I wouldn't be able to say with certainty. I'm sure it is a terrible game, but it's definitely not AAA. There's no way that you could consider this game AAA. Same goes for the likes of The Devil's Third, if you ask me. Now, people said the same thing about Animal Crossing, but that's actually not true. The team that made Animal Crossing is the largest division inside of Nintendo. It was created from a merger of two of Nintendo's largest teams, right? They're a very big team. Not to mention the fact that, at least in the instances that I've seen it in stores, there have been tons and tons of the amiibos lining the walls. It's not a small game. We may not like it, we may not care about it, but there was definitely equity behind it. It definitely got, popularity on the internet. Not good popularity, but popularity nonetheless. Not even on the same level as Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. And that was really the reasoning behind that choice. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, I'm sure it sucks. I really am. But it's not a AAA game. I also forgot about it. I also didn't play about it. That's why I made the choice of the Order, which, out of the 3 nominees, I definitely think is the worst game. Now, the most disappointing game of 2015. This one was a little bit more narrow in scope. While I had a lot of people disagreeing with me on the worst AAA game, when it came to the most disappointing, I had a certain people, in a very dickish way, trying to explain to me that my choice was wrong. Now, as I've explained before, the most disappointing game is really based on your own opinion. It's based on your own expectations. Now, if I don't have expectations for certain games, how can I lie and tell you that I was disappointed by them? I wasn't disappointed by Batman Arkham Knight. Didn't even play it. And even if it was disappointing, I know, I wasn't that hyped for it. Even if I did buy it, I probably wouldn't have been that disappointed because I wasn't hyped for it. I did not get hyped for Evolve, hence why I didn't get disappointed by it. Same goes for the likes of Fallout 4, though in that instance, I can definitely understand why people would be disappointed by that. Like, don't get me wrong, if you thought Batman Arkham Knight or Fallout 4 was more disappointing, I can see where you're coming from. This is more addressed to certain people who kept repeating these games, which, if anything, shows that you're not disappointed by these games, you don't like these games, which is a big difference between something being disappointing and you not liking it. That's what I noticed, because there were certain people who repeatedly brought up Evolve and Battlefield Hardline when they weren't even nominees. They weren't even in that ballpark, just because of the way my expectations were. Now, the most overrated game of 2015. I knew I was going to get flack for this because, I'm sorry to say this, but, the Kojima fan base is quite rabid, I will say. That you can't criticize Metal Gear Solid without them jumping down your neck over it. Which frustrates me because all you need to do is step back from the game and look at it and go, actually, this game is good, it is, but it's not as good as everybody keeps saying it is, which it isn't. Okay, it's repetitive, it does get repetitive, the second chapter is completely undefendable. I have done research on the Metal Gear Solid story as I'm not like some veteran, and even I don't understand what's going on. On top of the fact that I don't think it's super complex anyway, but that's probably a bigger rant for the Metal Gear series in general. And then, again, I had other people saying certain games like, here was a good one, right? People telling me that, Star Wars Battlefront was overrated? I mean, really? People are not hyping that game. And there's been massive division between the fan base and which one's good. Black Ops 3 was a nominee. It was definitely not the winner because, as usual, while it was praised by the press, it definitely was not a super well-received game among the community. I'm just taking a look at the comments right now for this. I just couldn't believe that certain people were like, oh no, actually, no, Metal Gear Solid isn't the most overrated game. It's the highest rated game of the generation. And to me, that's just baffling. I can't understand. Oh, and here was a good one as well. Someone said to me, no one said Metal Gear Solid 5 was Game of the Year. Really? I mean, have you not just... Then I had certain people saying things like Halo 5, which I don't really understand because I don't think Halo 5 was particularly overrated. I mean, it was overrated in the sense that I think critics said it was better than it was, but that was probably more due to scaling in terms of, the faults and all that. Look, I do not understand how this one was in contention, honestly. I thought this one was pretty clear cut, but evidently not the case. Now, worst gaming publisher of 2015. This one, there wasn't really that sort of situation of, no, you're wrong and you're really wrong about this. It was more that people didn't agree with the choice that I made, which was WB Games, over what seemingly is the most popular choice, being Konami. My issue with the way that people have looked at this is that if you look at it objectively, without your emotional attachment to the person who you like, there is no way that you can say Konami was worse than WB Games this year. Konami were very bad. Now, like I said, they were a runner-up, definitely. But to me, a simple disagreement between Konami and their VP, because a lot of people forget this, but Kojima was the VP of the company, which means that he was definitely responsible in some part for the latter-day failings of the company. That altercation, and, you know, the speculated, because it still is speculated, him not being allowed to attend the awards show. To me, that does not trump multiple failed launches, multiple pieces of day one DLC and season passes. I just don't think it even compares. WB Games, they had issues with Batman Arkham Knight releasing broken twice on PC. Mortal Kombat X released broken on PC. Dying Light was a disaster on PC, which a lot of people didn't address. There was a time this year when, excluding The Witcher 3, which was being distributed by different publishers in different regions, so it isn't even really a WB Games title, there was a time when every single one had some form of day one DLC. I even think it was a contest. And then you had people saying EA should have been nominated. I mean, really? Yeah, they didn't do a great job this year, but they were definitely not the worst. And that's just based off of people going, it's EA, they automatically are the worst. Which is, I never thought I'd say this, but it's unfair to EA. I try and give companies a fair shake each year. I try and basically make it to where it's a clean slate this year. You start off in the middle. I don't love you, I don't hate you. It's about what you do that year that warrants how I feel about you by the end of the year. I think that's a good way to do it, at least. So I did that thing with Ubisoft, and personally I don't think Ubisoft did anything that would warrant them being a nominee this year like they did last year. The same goes for the likes of EA. I don't think they did anything that bad except for Battlefront, and one game doesn't really trump that. And I don't know. I just thought that it was pretty straightforward. I thought most people would see that one coming. Evidently not, but yeah. And then we can start getting to the minor stuff. The things like why I didn't mention microtransactions as the worst gaming trend. I kind of bunched that in with the DLC and the season passes, though I understand if you didn't really, because I wasn't pretty clear about that. That was my mistake. The worst gaming YouTuber, there was a little bit of contention here about Anita Sarkeesian being the worst. Because she has a tangible effect on the industry, but that's actually not true. Anita Sarkeesian, her channel has very little pull in gaming. She'll promote a game, the video will get about 100,000 views, and the sales will not increase at all. She herself has no pull. The entire trend has pull, which is why they won the worst gaming trend of the year. But in terms of her herself and the channel with Jonathan McIntosh and all those idiots, nah, they don't have that much pull. The worst gaming website. Obviously, it was pretty close between Polygon and Kotaku. And it was a very hard choice because I did think Polygon in many ways deserved to get nominated and win again the second time running for this award. But to me, it just came down to that article from Steven Totillo that just... I don't understand how someone with a bachelor in journalism doesn't understand that when you leak stuff, it's just the price of journalism. If you burn bridges, you're gonna burn bridges inevitably if you're a good critic. And that's basically it. I hope it didn't come off as, you know, too harsh or anything. That wasn't my intention. I just got very frustrated when I kept seeing these, responses and all that, kind of trying to explain to me how I was wrong and that, you know, my reasoning was wrong and all that. And I really didn't think that was the case. I felt pretty good about a lot of the choices that I made. Other than that, I think it's been a fairly good run, personally. I'm really quite happy with it, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, because it definitely took a lot of time to get this one done, I'll tell you that much. So, let's keep an ear to the ground for future projects, including the finale to the Good For You Awards, as well as multiple videos that are coming up. As usual, thanks for your patience, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.